All right, ready for a deep dive. Today we're heading to Kenya to explore the world of cryptocurrency. You might be surprised just how big crypto is over there, even with, well, some back and forth on regulations. We've got 3 articles to guide us, one from June 2022, right when that huge crypto crash happened. Then we jump to January 2025. 2 more recent articles, all about Kenya making moves to legalize crypto. So, what are we trying to figure out today? We're going to uncover what's really driving crypto in Kenya, the impact of these new laws, and what it all means for, the people actually living there. All right, first up, that 2022 article from Business Daily. One stat just blew me away. 4 million Kenyans own crypto. That's actually more than the number of formally employed Kenyans at the time. That's got to tell us something, right?
Definitely. It kind of flips the idea that crypto is just for tech people or the wealthy. This shows us everyday Kenyans were using crypto, maybe because they saw it as a way to work around a financial system that wasn't working for them.
It's fascinating. The article mentions people using crypto for everything. Savings, paying for imports, even avoiding those pesky bank fees. Imagine this. You're a business owner in Kenya, ordering a shipment of mangoes from, say, Tanzania, and you're paying with Bitcoin. It's a whole different world of financial transactions.
Yeah, it shows how much need there is for financial services in Kenya, services that are, easy to use and affordable. If people are relying on crypto for daily stuff, it means traditional banks aren't cutting it.
Okay, so crypto is booming in Kenya, but then, bam, 2022 happens, the big crypto crash, Bitcoin plummets. I can only imagine what Kenyan investors were feeling. The same Business Daily article, it quotes 2 people, and they have totally opposite takes on the crash. You've got George Makisha from Binance basically saying, relax, these things happen.
Yeah.
But then you've got the central bank governor, Njoroge. He's super worried about the risks to the whole financial system. How do we make sense of those 2 viewpoints?
Well, it's that classic tension between embracing risk and wanting stability. Waukesha, he's from a crypto exchange, right? Naturally, he wants people to stay confident in the market. Volatility is just part of crypto. Experienced investors get that. But Governor Njoroge, his concerns make sense too. The central bank, their job is to protect Kenya's economy and crypto. Without regulations, it can be unpredictable. Huge gains, huge losses. That can be dangerous, especially in a developing country.
So did that 2022 crash, was it like a wake-up call for Kenya? Is that why we're seeing this push for regulations in 2025?
It definitely played a part. That crash exposed some weaknesses, but it's also part of a bigger global trend. Countries everywhere are realizing they can't just ignore crypto, they have to figure out how to deal with it. And for Kenya, a country known for being tech-savvy, becoming a leader in African crypto, well, that's a pretty attractive idea.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's jump ahead to those 2025 articles. Both Kenya to Legalize and Kenya Seeks. They both suggest Kenya is setting up rules for crypto. But Kenya Seeks, and it also mentions the IMF, they're waving some red flags, saying Kenya is lagging behind on regulations, specifically risks of money laundering and terrorism financing. Those are serious accusations. What are the real concerns there, and how could this new bill address them?
Those concerns are real, no doubt. Crypto transactions, they can be hard to track sometimes. That does make them attractive for illegal stuff. But good regulations, they can help minimize those risks. Think know your customer rules, tracking transactions, working with other countries. To keep an eye out for suspicious activity, it's not about getting rid of all risk. It's about making the system safer.
So finding that balance, right? Encouraging the good stuff while preventing the bad.
Exactly. It's a challenge for lots of countries, figuring out this whole new crypto world.
And speaking of good stuff, that Kenya to Legalize article, it talks about the government wanting to capitalize on crypto's benefits. What benefits are they looking at, especially for Kenya's economy?
Okay, here's where things get really interesting. For Kenya, there are a few big ones. First, financial inclusion. Crypto could give people access to financial services, people who are shut out of traditional banking, especially in rural areas. Second, remittances. Kenya relies a lot on money sent home from Kenyans working abroad. Crypto makes those international transfers faster and potentially cheaper. And third, attracting investment. With clear regulations, Kenya could become a hub for crypto businesses, bring in money, create jobs.
So we've got potential benefits, we've got concerns about risks, and here's what I find interesting. Kenya Seeks says the bill is open for public comment. What does that tell us about how Kenya is approaching this whole thing?
It shows they want to be transparent. They're not just imposing rules from above. They're actually asking people for input, people who will be directly affected by these changes.
That's really cool.
Yes.
It's like they're saying, hey, this is new for everyone. Let's figure it out together.
Yeah.
All right, so we've seen how Kenya became a crypto hotspot. We talked about the 2022 crash, and now the government's moving towards regulation. But what happened in between? What was happening on the ground before the government stepped in?
That's a good point. To really get why these new rules matter, we need to understand how Kenyans were using crypto before the crash, what needs it was fulfilling.
Let's do it. I want to hear about those mango importers, and anyone else finding creative ways to use crypto in their daily lives. Those stories might hold the key to understanding the real impact of this technology on Kenya.
Yeah, let's get into those stories. The article talks about Kenyans using crypto for trade, especially with nearby countries like Tanzania. Think about it. You're a small business owner importing goods. You could skip all the hassle of banks. Crypto makes those transactions faster, cheaper.
So they're avoiding all those fees and complicated processes. Makes trade more accessible, especially for smaller businesses.
Exactly. And it's not just about saving money. Crypto also brings security and transparency, something that can be missing with traditional banking, especially in places with limited financial infrastructure.
Right, that makes sense. But let's get back to those proposed regulations, the IMF warning about money laundering and terrorism financing. Is that a real concern here?
It's a concern, definitely, but we have to remember those risks exist in traditional finance too. The goal shouldn't be to, crush innovation. It's about putting safeguards in place, protecting the system without holding it back.
Okay, so what could those safeguards look like practically?
Well, Kenya mentions the bill. It outlines requirements for licensing. For crypto exchanges and service providers, this means stricter know-your-customer rules, monitoring transactions, reporting requirements.
So bringing those crypto businesses under regulation, kind of like traditional financial institutions, but wouldn't that make it harder for smaller players to get in? Could that stifle innovation?
It's a valid concern, for sure. Finding that balance is really important. Kenyan regulators, they have a tough job, creating a system that encourages responsible growth, while also supporting the entrepreneurial spirit. That's driving crypto adoption in the country.
Right. It's a tough balance. So what about the average Kenyan? Someone who's already using crypto. Let's say I'm one of those 4 million Kenyans who were holding crypto back in 2022. What changes would I see?
Well, you'd probably see more requirements for verifying your identity. When you use crypto exchanges or services, it's part of those know your customer regulations.
So no more anonymity.
Not completely. You'll still have decentralized platforms and peer-to-peer transactions, but regulated platforms, they'll need you to verify who you are, kind of like opening a bank account.
Got it. And for someone who's never used crypto before, could this new legislation make it easier or safer to get started?
Absolutely. Regulations often make an industry feel more legitimate, more secure. If you were hesitant before because of the lack of clear rules, this new law could give you more confidence.
So it's like moving from a Wild West to a more organized market with consumer protections in place.
Exactly. And since Kenya wants to be a crypto hub, you might even see more educational resources popping up, user-friendly platforms designed to make crypto easier for everyone to understand.
Interesting. So this could lead to even more people using crypto across Kenya.
It's definitely possible. And if Kenya does this right, if they implement these regulations well, it could have a ripple effect. Other African nations might follow suit.
We've talked a lot about the potential benefits, but what about the downsides of regulation? Are there any?
One concern is that if regulations are too strict, they could stifle innovation, the very thing that makes crypto so attractive. Finding that balance is key, protecting consumers while keeping the ecosystem dynamic.
It's that tightrope walk again, right? Too much regulation, you kill growth. Too little, and people are vulnerable.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance, and we don't know the outcome yet. But the fact that Kenya is involving the public, that shows they're willing to listen and adapt.
Let's talk more about that public comment period. What kind of feedback do you think the government will get?
I think they'll hear a lot of different perspectives. Some people will want stricter controls, prioritizing consumer protection, preventing illegal activity. Others, especially those in the crypto industry, they'll probably want a more flexible approach, something that encourages innovation and attracts investment.
Sounds like finding that middle ground will be crucial.
It will. The key is to create a framework that works for everyone involved: consumers, businesses, investors, and the government itself.
How might Kenya's approach to regulation be different from what we're seeing in other parts of the world?
Kenya's situation is unique. They're trying to use this technology to address their specific challenges, like financial inclusion and cross-border trade. Their regulations will likely reflect those priorities.
So it's not just copying what other countries are doing, it's a tailored approach based on their own needs and goals.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting. Kenya is writing its own playbook. They're looking at global best practices, sure, but adapting them to their own circumstances.
It's like they're saying, we see the potential of crypto, and we're going to figure out how to make it work for us.
Exactly. It's proactive, it's ambitious. It'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the regulations, but let's zoom out for a second. Think about the bigger picture. What does Kenya's embrace of crypto tell us, even with these regulations coming in? What does it say about how governments are viewing this technology?
It's a sign that governments are starting to see crypto differently, not just as a threat, but as a potential tool for economic growth and development.
So moving from skepticism to exploration.
Exactly. And I think that shift, it's happening because more and more people are realizing crypto is here to stay.
And it's not just about adopting the technology itself, it's about understanding how to use it to solve real problems, create opportunities.
You got it. And that's what makes Kenya's approach so interesting. They're not just reacting to crypto, they're actively shaping how it develops within their own country.
So proactive, not reactive. That's a key takeaway for me.
Absolutely. And it'll be fascinating to see how this approach influences things, not just in Kenya, but across the entire African crypto landscape.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground, from the specifics of Kenya's new crypto bill to the bigger trends shaping the global crypto scene. But before we wrap up, I'm curious about something. We've seen how Kenya is trying to balance the good and the bad of crypto, but what about the impact on individual freedom and privacy?
That's a really important point. Yeah, it does feel like there's this tension between wanting regulations and the whole idea of crypto being, decentralized and anonymous. How do those two things work together?
It's a tough question.
It is. It's complicated. On one hand, governments want to stop illegal stuff, right, and protect people. But on the other hand, too many rules could stifle innovation, and that goes against why a lot of people like crypto in the first place.
So we need to find that balance again. But who gets to decide where that balance is?
That's where this public comment period is so important. It gives everyone a chance to speak up. Individuals, businesses, advocacy groups, they can voice their concerns and actually help shape the final law.
So this is where the real action is. It's not just about what the government wants. It's about what the people of Kenya want.
Exactly. It's a chance for Kenyans to decide together what role they want crypto to play in their society, their economy.
Okay, so we've really dug into the situation in Kenya. But let's step back for a moment. Look at the bigger picture. Kenya moving towards crypto regulation and the way they're doing it. What does that tell us about how governments around the world are starting to view this technology?
It's a really interesting case study. For a long time, governments kind of took a hands-off approach to crypto, ignoring it or just issuing warnings about the risks. But now we're seeing a change.
So instead of fighting it, they're trying to understand it, maybe even embrace it.
Exactly. And I think there are a few reasons for that. First, they're realizing crypto is here to stay. It's going mainstream. Second, they're starting to see that crypto can actually help economies grow, especially in developing countries.
It's like they're realizing they can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They're seeing other countries like El Salvador jumping in, making big moves in the crypto world, and they don't want to be left behind.
Right. El Salvador went all in on Bitcoin, made it legal tender.
That was a bold move, for sure. And while most countries aren't ready to go that far, it's definitely a sign of the times. Governments are experimenting, trying out different ways to bring crypto into their economies.
So lots of different approaches, but everyone's watching.
Definitely. Crypto is a global thing. No country can ignore it.
And what about Africa's role in all this? We focus on Kenya, but are there other countries in Africa making big moves in crypto?
South Africa is another one to watch. They've been proactive about regulations, trying to find that balance between encouraging innovation and protecting investors. And Nigeria, even with some uncertainty around regulations, they've got a huge, vibrant crypto community.
It feels like the whole continent is realizing the potential of crypto.
It's a really exciting time. Africa has so much going for it. Young people who are comfortable with technology, a growing middle class, and a real need for different kinds of financial solutions. It's the perfect recipe for Africa to become a leader in crypto.
We're witnessing the birth of a new financial frontier right here in Africa.
I like that. It captures the energy of what's happening.
All right, we've covered a lot today, but before we go, what are the one or two most important things you think people should remember about Kenya's crypto journey and what it means for the future?
I think the biggest takeaway is Kenya moving towards regulation. Even though it raises some questions, it's a positive thing overall. It shows they're serious about crypto, about using its potential while managing the risks. This could be a turning point. not just for Kenya, but for all of Africa.
A potential turning point for a whole continent.
Exactly. And the second thing to remember is, this is just the beginning. We'll have to see what the actual law looks like, how it's put into practice, and how the Kenyan people respond to it.
It's a story that's still unfolding. And to our listeners, as we've heard today, Kenya's crypto journey is a fascinating case study. It shows how a nation is dealing with the challenges and opportunities of this revolutionary technology. It's a story that's still being written, and it holds valuable lessons for all of us as we navigate this ever-changing world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.